Oscar Anderson had heard this story a million times. Guys usually say, life was good until it turned bad. And he was no exception. Anderson thought everything was going smoothly, but then everything suddenly went to hell. Oscar was 33 years old, and at this age, life seemed quite decent to him. He worked at the aerospace company, developing evacuation systems for NASA's manned spacecraft upon the space agency's request. For an engineer, this was a dream job. He had been married to Amanda for 7 years and they had 3 children, 7-year-old son Tyler and 6-year-old twins Beth and Emily. Family had always been the top priority for Oscar, and he tried to find a balance between work and quality time with his loved ones. Their parents lived nearby and adored spoiling their grandchildren. Amanda's sister Lucy was also a close person to the Anderson family. They lived in a cozy 4-bedroom house in a respectable neighborhood. They planned to renovate the basement to gain additional space as the girls grew up. Oscar and Amanda met in college, fell in love, and soon after got married. Anderson received education in aerospace engineering, while his wife worked as a legal assistant. After the birth of their eldest son Tyler, Amanda quit her job, but returned to it when the twins were born. When the girls started school, Amanda's behavior noticeably changed. She hinted to her husband about certain issues in their relationship, but Oscar didn't know how to respond to these hints. Before everything went downhill, Oscar had met Amanda's boss, Stanley Cross, several times at company events and the company's Christmas party. Anderson immediately disliked this man. He seemed arrogant, rude, and hard to trust. In those rare moments when Oscar visited Amanda at work, Cross behaved possessively and reluctantly let the assistant talk to her husband. Anderson scrutinized carefully, trying to spot any signs of romantic involvement between them, but at that moment, he didn't find anything suspicious. Everything fell apart when the twins finished kindergarten. Oscar took them to his parents for the weekend, hoping for a pleasant time alone with his wife to work on strengthening their relationship. However, upon returning home, he found Amanda dressed to the nines, incredibly beautiful in a short black dress with high heels and flawless makeup. "Wow, baby, you look stunning," Oscar exclaimed. "If you had told me we were going somewhere, I would have hurried back home early. Give me a couple of minutes to freshen up and change, and I'll be fully ready." In reality, "We're not going anywhere together," Amanda startled him. "I'm leaving, but not with you." Anderson was stunned by what he heard. "What do you mean?" "I have a date with the boss, with Stan Cross," Amanda announced. "And this marks the beginning of new rules in our relationship. He will take me for the night. I won't be back until Sunday. We've booked a room downtown." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Oscar exclaimed in shock. "Calm down and accept it," his wife said firmly. "This is how it's going to be now. I'm leaving, but I'll be back on Sunday afternoon." "Well, Amanda, if you leave now, you better not come back," Oscar retorted. "No, dear, you need to listen to me now and take note of what I'm going to say. Whatever you say, we are still married. But I need more. If you create a scene, you'll be the one leaving. A dark period of your life will begin beyond that door. And I don't want the children to see their father in ruin and prison. Sit down, I'll tell you about the changes before Stan arrives. He'll be here in 30 minutes. Otherwise, he'll explain it to you himself, and you won't like it. If that jerk shows up, he'll leave with a broken nose," Anderson raged. "Don't do that," Amanda said firmly. "First, consider what he'll do if you resist. Second, he has a bodyguard, Max. Don't get involved, or you'll end up in the hospital." This disgusting feeling was familiar to Oscar since his time in the Middle East, when he was ambushed several times. His wife and Stan set up this ambush, and he, Oscar, fell for it. Oscar walked past Amanda and headed upstairs. "Where are you going?" "We need to talk," demanded Amanda. "I'll freshen up." "I'll be back in 5 minutes," replied her husband. Oscar had several rules for dealing with ambushes. Firstly, try to notice it before they catch you. But with Amanda and Cross, he didn't see that. Secondly, quickly find shelter. That's why Oscar was heading straight to his bedroom now. And the third rule, develop an escape plan for yourself and the team. Oscar changed clothes. He turned on the recorder on his phone. He went to the old chest. Under the uniform were service medals and a 9mm Betsy pistol of the Marine Corps. It was not allowed to keep weapons, but the confusion during discharge allowed him to leave it. Betsy saved him in battle more times than he could count. Loading the magazine, Anderson heard a call from above. "Come down quickly, Oscar, or you'll regret it." "Just a moment. Bring me a beer," he shouted in response. Oscar tucked the gun into his waistband and covered it with his shirt. It was a semi-automatic double-action pistol, just needed to pull the trigger. If you didn't specifically look for it, the weapon was inconspicuous. Before leaving the bedroom, Oscar turned on the recording on his phone and put the gadget in his pocket so that the camera peeked out. Anderson wanted to know what Amanda and her boss were up to. He decided to use the interrogation methods he had learned in the Marine Corps to remain calm and encourage his wife to tell him how she saw the situation. In the living room, Amanda was sitting at the table with a glass of wine, beer prepared for her husband. Finally, she said sternly, "There are things to settle before Stan arrives." "I see you have something on your mind, Amanda," said Oscar. "Tell me about this new situation. First of all, remember, I love you more than anything. We have a family, I want to grow old with you. And I don't want to cause you pain, dear." Amanda began, but her husband interrupted. "No, dear. Just Oscar and Amanda." The ban on endearments seemed to irritate the wife, but she continued, "Everything has changed since tonight. And you will have to accept it. You must know that Stan and I have become very close, after he made me his personal assistant. By that I mean, we have a romance that has been going on for 7 months." Amanda told how it all started, with flirting and coffee breaks together. Then there was an evening in the boss's office, when the first intimate closeness happened. He is attractive, charming, fit. It was hard to resist. We ended up on his couch, he was a skilled lover. I enjoyed it so much that I didn't want to stop, she confessed. "So you didn't even think about how the affair would affect me?" asked the bewildered Oscar. "I'm sorry, no, I didn't think about it. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. You are the man I want to be with forever." Ramsey took a sip of beer. "Good luck to you with that. Tell me, Amanda, why after 7 months of secret meetings did you suddenly decide to open up? You could have continued indefinitely right under my nose. Until now we've been hiding, meeting in Stan's office, his limousine, hotels. But we're tired of the secrecy. We want to be open, spend nights together, travel as a couple. We need you to accept our lifestyle." Oscar took another sip. "Well, good luck with that." "No, Oscar," Amanda reached for his hands. "We are not getting divorced, we are staying married. You just need to accept that Stan and I will spend a lot of time together. I will stay with him overnight a couple of times a week. We will go away for weekends, and I might even go with him on longer trips to Europe or the Caribbean." Amanda's words about her new role as Stan's personal assistant, traveling, meeting important people, accompanying him to business and social events, felt like a knife cutting through Oscar's heart. "Stan pays me well, it will be good for us," Amanda said. "Think about the benefits. Imagine vacations, college funds for our children, finally renovating our house by the lake, just as we always wanted." Oscar asked with bitter irony, "Do you really think I would want anything from this, paid for from some fund of Stanley's?" "I am not just some fund," Amanda sharply replied, anger creeping into her voice. "I am an important part of the company. I am the person Stanley relies on when managing his law firm. Closeness is just part of the deal with such an influential person as him. I am flattered that he wants me to be his mistress. And you should be too. And let's be honest, this affair probably won't last forever. I would say it will last a maximum of 2 to 3 years. Then everything will return to how it was before. I will be your faithful wife again, and we will enjoy our family for the next 50 years. And here's something else," Amanda continued. "Stan wants to be friends with you. He thinks we can share me, while he gets what he wants, and you play by his rules. He knows that I love you and still want to be close to you. He even said that you could have intimate relations with me. There will just be some conditions. Since he will sometimes come to our home, he wants to be part of the family, maybe even as an uncle to our children." Oscar felt his heart clench with anger, pain, and bewilderment. The ground was slipping from under his feet at the realization of how far Amanda had gone in her efforts to please Stanley, dragging not only him but also their children into this absurd and humiliating farce. Everything Oscar considered unshakable in his family life was crumbling like a house of cards. Internally seething with anger, Oscar maintained his composure outwardly. That scoundrel will never see my children or speak to them, understood? Why does he even need to meddle in my family? Doesn't he have his own? Stan is married to a young woman from a wealthy family. Their marriage is strategic. Unfortunately, she is barren, Amanda explained. Maybe he should consider adopting and staying away from other people's lives? Sneered Anderson. Stan really wants his own children, especially a son, to continue the legacy. Ideally, both a son and a daughter. Why wouldn't this jerk use the services of a surrogate mother? Then he could have as many children as he wanted. He's worried he'll be a bad father. He wants the child to grow up in a loving family, Amanda explained, lowering her eyes. Oh, I see now, exclaimed Oscar, understanding everything. He wants you to get pregnant. And for me to raise his child. It will be our child, you will love him, as you love me. The child will have a double surname. Stan will pay a lot of money for expenses until college. Damn, are you already pregnant? Burst out Oscar. No, but he wants me to stop taking the pills in a few months. I said, only if you agree to the new terms. As if it could get any worse, mumbled Oscar. He made it clear to her again. Well, good luck with that. Amanda flew into a rage. Stop saying that. She sharply replied to her husband. I know you're upset right now, Oscar, but maybe you'll change your mind later. Her words struck Anderson. When he jumped up to reply, the doorbell rang. Amanda hurried to open it, letting in her boss Stanley Cross. He, upon entering, embraced her waist and kissed her. The situation is getting better and better, Oscar muttered to himself. How did he react? Cross asked Amanda. Not very well. You may have to explain to him the consequences of disobedience, she replied. Oscar saw how Stan, a tall man over 5 feet with long gray hair, in a black suit, confidently approached him closely. Mr. Anderson, we need to talk, Stan said in a commanding tone. You won't dictate your rules in my house, growled Oscar. I advise you not to interfere with me. Furthermore, I insist that you stay and listen to me. If you leave now, my driver will stop you before you go far. By nightfall, you'll be in jail. Sit down, ordered Cross. Oscar glanced at the door and saw a big guy waiting on my doorstep. There was no fear, but Oscar wanted to hear Cross out, so he reluctantly sat down. Smirking, Stan began. Well, now we can talk like adults. When your wife became my personal assistant, it included some additional duties. Yes, I'm talking about intimate closeness. I've been close with your wife for the past 6 months, but we got tired of hiding. As my assistant, Amanda will take care of my needs, both professional and personal. Mr. Anderson, you will still be Amanda's husband and a father to your children. As for me, I will take care of Amanda's physiological needs, most of the time at the hotel or in my office. But sometimes, when you're not around, we will use your bed. You scoundrel! Why should I put up with this? I'd rather divorce this traitor. Oscar spat out these words towards Cross. Cross lowered his voice, but a threat resonated in it. Mr. Anderson, such talks won't help. Remember who I am. I'm a prominent lawyer from the city's leading law firm. If you try to divorce her, you'll have to pay. And not just in court. We'll take everything from you, make you pay alimony and child support while she's with me. Your son and daughters? You'll hardly see them. You'll be accused of crimes against children, thrown in jail, and permanently lose custody. Your job? Gone. Your family and friends? They'll turn their backs on you. Oscar was stunned by the realization of how far Amanda and this bastard had gone for their affair. Meanwhile, Stan continued, Now I see you won't do anything foolish. If you try to tell my wife, you'll regret it. My driver and his buddies will take care of that. If you try to run away, my investigators will find you. So just accept this new deal. Your wife is doing her job exceptionally well. I especially want to commend her oral work. With bitterness, Oscar recalls how he turned to Amanda and asked, "Are you really going to do this to me?" To which she calmly replied, "I hope not, Oscar, if you cooperate. Over time, you will get used to it, and it will seem normal." Still shaken, Oscar watched as his wife and boss headed towards the door. But before they left, Oscar intended to tell them something. "Wait, I have a few words for you." "What is it? And speak quickly," Stan irritably interjected. Taking a deep breath, Oscar began, "As soon as I have a couple of drinks and say goodbye to my marriage, I will call your wife to tell her everything." Addressing Amanda, he continued, "After that, I will call your sister Lucy to tell her everything." Saying this, Oscar noticed Stan's confusion, not used to facing resistance. "What did you say?" Stan asked. Without repeating, Oscar continued, "Early Saturday morning, I will call a locksmith to change all the locks." Amanda listened attentively, trying to understand the situation. "After the locks are changed, I will go to Kate, who lives on the next street. She shamelessly flirts with me ever since her husband died a few months ago. She is older than you and not a supermodel, but she has an amazing figure. An hour ago, I wouldn't have even thought of seeing someone else. But everything changes, doesn't it?" Oscar describes Amanda's offended look with bitter satisfaction, stumbling over her words, "Oscar, you can't do this." He continued, "When you return on Sunday, you will find all of Amanda's belongings on the front yard. Every little thing, clothes, shoes, cosmetics, jewelry, even our wedding album. And no, not in trash bags. You better hurry to pick them up before the sprinklers turn on at 4 a.m. on Monday." With grim satisfaction, Oscar recalls Stan's rage, his flushed face, and clenched fists when he realized his threats had no effect. Amanda's suffering expression also did not escape Oscar. "Something else," he added, summing up. "On Monday, I'm meeting with a divorce lawyer. I'm filing for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, naming you, Stanley, as an accomplice. Plus, I'm suing you for interfering in our marriage and your company for violating corporate rules. If, of course, you have any at all. Even if the lawsuits fail, they will still tarnish your reputation, Stanley." Cross, in a rage, hurled his travel bag against the wall and strode towards Oscar, then forcefully jabbed him in the chest with 2 fingers, and Oscar had to restrain himself from striking back. "Listen, fool," Cross began. "You have no idea who you're dealing with and how ruthless I can be when I want to destroy someone. I'm Stanley Cross. I head the largest law firm in these parts. I can tear you apart in court in an instant. By the time Amanda and I settle into the hotel, you'll be in handcuffs on various charges. You may think you can fight back if you're innocent. You can't. I've been practicing law in this state for 30 years. I personally know most high-ranking police officers, and I have close ties with a bunch of prosecutors. Heck, I've even slept with some of them. Most judges in this city either owe me big time or know I have dirt on them. Even politicians owe me because I helped them get elected one way or another." Stanley paced around, and Oscar didn't want to interrupt him. "If you go to your girlfriend Kate tomorrow, cops will stop you and find a reason to search your car. Most likely, they'll find pills. Then the Vice Squad will get a tip about inappropriate videos with minors on your computer, and that's just the beginning. How long and how much do you think you'll fight all this? You won't find a single lawyer who dares to contact me. You'll be crushed. And meanwhile, I'll still be with your wife. Got it, idiot?" Oscar recalls with bitter irony how Stanley turned to him again, demanding respect and addressing him as Sir or Mr. Cross, threatening punishment from Max the bodyguard for disobedience. 2 blows from Cross to the face ignited a flash of rage in Oscar, and with lightning speed, he twisted the offender's arm, making him scream in pain and collapse onto the couch. Cross's cry of, "Max, come here," did not catch Oscar off guard. He was expecting a confrontation with the bodyguard mentioned by Amanda. The appearance of the huge and imposing Max did not shake Oscar's resolve to stand up for himself, despite knowing that the punishment would be severe. Mentally, Oscar goes back to the 17-day captivity during the war, when as the only American captured by the enemy, he bravely endured torture and humiliation. Being hung by his twisted arms caused unbearable suffering, but also strengthened his spirit. Compared to that, The beating from Max seemed like mere nonsense to Oscar. The first blow from Max sent Oscar crashing into the coffee table, breaking his nose. The second blow to his eye almost knocked him unconscious. Realizing he wouldn't last long, Oscar taunted Max by saying, "You hit like a girl." Offended, Max grabbed Oscar by the hair, but then a shot rang out from Betsy, hitting the bodyguard's arm. Oscar grimly watched as the shocked Max slumped into the chair. "How many, gone forever, do you have, Max?" "How many, Kia?" "I have 27, all soldiers fighting for their beliefs. And I have reasons to respect them." "How much respect do you think I have for you?" "That's right, Max, none. So there's no special reason why I shouldn't shoot you, right?" Oscar interrupted Max's pleas for mercy, noting that the bullet had passed through the shoulder joint. "You'll bleed out if I don't get you to a doctor within the hour. But don't worry, those orthopedists can fix everything with their prosthetics. You'll have to learn to use your left hand, and if you ever feel pain in that hand again, remember me. If I ever see you again, I will consider it as you coming to harm me, and I will not hesitate to finish you off," Oscar grimly promised. Amanda's warning, "Oscar, watch out," saved him from Cross's attack with a poker from behind. The blow injured his forearm, but Oscar, despite the pain, temporarily incapacitated Cross from attacking. Cross slid to the floor, and Oscar ordered him not to move, pressing Betsy against Cross's head. "How do you like my version of shock and awe, huh? If you had heard what I told Max, you would know that I officially took down 27 people in combat. 7 of them met their end with this magnum. And before you think about resisting, know that this thing only needs 4 ounces of pressure on the trigger, and I already have 2 ounces, Oscar said grimly. Making Cross call his wife on FaceTime, Oscar coldly introduced himself, "Mrs. Cross, my name is Oscar Anderson. You may not know me, but you know my wife, Amanda Anderson. She works as your husband's personal assistant." To Mrs. Cross's alarmed questions, Oscar replied, "I have your husband, Mrs. Cross, with a certain tool in his mouth. Your husband and my wife have been in a romantic relationship for several months now. Today, they plan to spend the weekend at a hotel. When I objected, your husband ordered his thug to beat me up. Unfortunately, I had to shoot him, and now it's your husband's turn." Stunned, Mrs. Cross could not believe what was happening. "It's time to go, Mrs. Cross. The cops are on their way." "It was nice talking to you," Oscar said grimly, ending the conversation. The pain of his wife's betrayal and the humiliation from Cross burned inside him, but he knew that revenge would help him keep his sanity afloat. Oscar Anderson glanced at Max lying on the floor and turned to Cross with a cutting question. "What was your brilliant plan, Cross? Send Max and his thugs to take care of me?" Cross remained silent, his face contorted with pain and fear. Oscar continued, his voice calm yet threatening. "Max needs to rest a bit. I warned him. And now listen carefully, Cross. If you send anyone else, then I'll come for you. Do you understand me?" Cross nodded spasmodically. Oscar wrinkled his nose at the unpleasant smell. "Are you out of your mind?" He chuckled. "Now I need a new carpet." Turning to Amanda, Oscar reached out his hand. "Pass me my briefcase." Amanda silently handed him the briefcase. Oscar took out his laptop and, aiming the gun at the hard drive, sarcastically asked, "Was this supposed to be your stash of dirt on me, Cross?" Without waiting for an answer, Oscar fired. Cross, lying nearby, screamed, covering his ear, probably with a ruptured eardrum. Oscar leaned towards him and whispered, "Good luck using this computer, you fool." Then he stood up and ordered Cross, on the couch. Quickly. Cross, holding his side and ear, clumsily got up and sat on the couch. Oscar turned to Amanda. "Amanda, bring a damp towel from the kitchen and help Max with his shoulder." When Amanda returned and started treating Max's wound, Oscar warned everyone. "Stay quiet. I'll be back soon." He headed to the kitchen, took out the phone, which was still recording, and hid it in a stack of kitchen towels. Oscar knew that the police could delete the recording if Cross used his connections. Wiping his face with the damp towel, Oscar returned to the living room. "Wait for the cops. They'll be here soon along with the ambulance." Voices of neighbors were heard outside. Oscar stepped onto the porch and saw his friend, retired Marine Corps Colonel Orson Sage. "Everything all right, Captain?" the colonel asked. "Could be better, Colonel," Oscar replied. Sirens wailed in the distance. Oscar asked the colonel for help. "Could you unload these magnums and place them on the table? I don't want the cops to catch me with weapons in hand." The colonel quickly complied with the request. Kate, a widowed neighbor, approached them, concerned about Oscar's appearance. "I would like to explain everything, but time is short," said Oscar. "My wife's boyfriend, a lawyer, tried to frame me with drugs." He handed the colonel the keys to the car and asked him to hide it in the garage. Kate noticed that Oscar looked unwell. "I have a headache and feel dizzy," he admitted. "It seems the blow was harder than I thought." With Kate's help, Oscar sat on the porch steps. Police cars and ambulances arrived. Oscar briefly explained the situation to the officers. One of them noticed, "It looks like you need medical help too." Medics examined Oscar as he talked about a possible forearm fracture. In a semi-conscious state, he saw Max being taken away on a stretcher, and Cross being helped into the ambulance. Amanda, accompanied by a female officer, stopped next to Oscar. She was crying and trying to apologize, but Oscar only coldly replied, "Go to hell, Amanda." After that, she was taken away, and preparations began to transport Oscar to the hospital. Oscar was drifting in and out of consciousness from the blows and stress he had endured. Nurse Rose greeted him warmly after a 3-day sleep induced by sedatives. Examining his injuries, cast, bandages on his face, Oscar anxiously learned from Detective Hardman that he was arrested on charges by Stanley, Amanda, and Max. The only positive news was that his children were with his sister-in-law Lucy. Lawyer Sam Wilton suggested pleading guilty to mitigate the punishment. However, Oscar insisted on his innocence, puzzled at how his peaceful life could be so shattered because of his wife's adultery. He questioned the domestic violence accusation made by Stanley. Despite the proposed deal, Oscar decided to reject it out of fear of civil lawsuits. Oscar sought help from his Uncle Jack, a former military lawyer, setting an important condition of confidentiality. At the preliminary hearing, Oscar declared his innocence. Despite the prosecutor's demand, the judge kept him in the hospital for a couple more days before the trial. Uncle Jack's visit became a long-awaited comfort for Oscar in this nightmare. Uncle reassured that the children were safe with Aunt Lucy, who sided with Oscar. Oscar could finally confide in a close person and feel less lonely in the battle against unjust accusations. Oscar spent several days in the hospital after the incident. Mixed feelings overwhelmed him: fear, confusion, and relief that it was all over. He gratefully accepted Uncle Jack's support, confiding in him and telling the whole truth about what happened. Oscar's story seemed unbelievable, but the presence of the video recording on his phone gave confidence. Uncle Jack promised to support Oscar, focusing on his recovery and exploring options for bail. "Your main focus should be on recovery while I work on your case and look for bail options," he said. Oscar agreed, only asking him to look after his children. 3 days after being discharged, he appeared before the judge with his uncle. Despite the efforts of his relative, he was placed under house arrest in a secure community under his uncle's supervision. Legal restrictions prevented him from returning home for the phone with evidence. Tormented by anxiety, Oscar contacted neighbor Colonel, who told him about suspicious people near his garage. The colonel found out that they worked for a private detective agency linked to lawyer Stanley Cross. Desperately needing evidence, Uncle Jack devised a plan to meet with Amanda and Cross's lawyer Gordon Merritt under the guise of mediation. Uncle Jack skillfully steered the conversation towards the possibility of admitting guilt in exchange for reduced charges. At one point, he told Amanda, "Oscar wants you to tell the children that he misses them and loves them," which softened her towards him. Asking for water and getting Amanda's permission to go to the dining room, Uncle Jack deftly retrieved Oscar's phone from the kitchen. Oscar felt a glimmer of hope for the first time since his arrest. After the guests left, Uncle handed the phone over to the experts for data extraction. While waiting for the report, Oscar was nervous, wondering if this piece of evidence could dispel the accusations. When they watched the video together, tears of relief almost welled up in Oscar's eyes. The whole truth was captured. But the new findings angered him. There was an email from an unknown address on the phone, with some photos attached. If Oscar had opened the email, the photos would have automatically ended up on his phone. Most likely, it was an attempt to frame him with compromising pictures. Uncle Jack offered two options. We could show this to the district attorney right now and probably get the charges against you dropped. Also, Cross, Max, and Amanda could face some problems. But if Cross has influence, all of this could just disappear. Do we have another choice? Pondered Oscar. Uncle Jack replied, we could wait until the hearing. The prosecutor will likely put all the conspirators on the witness stand to tell their version, and then we could present ours. Oscar immersed himself in thoughts, carefully considering the possible consequences of each decision. He desperately wanted to dispel the rumors as soon as possible, but also thirsted for fair retribution for the guilty. With grim satisfaction, Oscar realized that his tormentors would soon face justice. The prosecutor will have to pursue them for conspiracy, perjury, and other charges. They face serious prison time, he thought. The only glimmer of hope in this story was the potential reunion with his children. And I will have a chance to get my children back, mused Oscar. Uncle Jack offered two options. We could quickly finish this or drag it out with a lengthy legal process, involving them all in a big conspiracy. Oscar thirsted for revenge, so he decided without hesitation, I am fully in favor of destroying them. I knew you would say that, Oscar. I have always wanted to publicly expose them and turn the situation against them in court, like Perry Mason, Uncle Jack confessed enthusiastically. This childhood dream of an experienced lawyer amused Oscar. They awaited the hearing, preparing meticulously and keeping their trump card, a video recording, secret so that the prosecution could not suppress it. A week before the trial, Uncle Jack left, and Oscar received an unexpected visit from Amanda. Despite mixed feelings, he let her in, trying to maintain politeness. Amanda clearly tried to impress with her well-groomed appearance. Come in, Amanda, Oscar greeted. You look wonderful. Thank you, Oscar, you look very fit and attractive, she responded. Oscar showed hospitality, offering wine, but Amanda immediately got to the point. Despite everything, Oscar, I still love you just as much. She confessed her true intentions to let him into the luxurious world of Cross and his extravagant lifestyle. Oscar replied bitterly, I ruined your plans, didn't I? Amanda revealed shocking details of how Cross wanted to intimidate Oscar and forced her to stage beatings. The realization of the depth of betrayal stirred a wave of anger in Oscar. He directly asked if the attack on Amanda was part of the plan to discredit him. From the photos, it's clear you had cuts and bruises. I never laid a hand on you, Oscar said reproachfully. It was Stanley's plan. As soon as you left, he came up with an alternative version. Cross said you accused us of having an affair, Amanda reluctantly admitted with tears. Oscar was struck by the cynicism and cruelty of their scheme. Then Amanda voiced the true purpose of her visit, to persuade him to admit guilt in exchange for a suspended sentence in a veterans clinic. That's why Stanley's offer is the best way out for everyone, Amanda pleaded with tears in her eyes. Oscar avoided a direct refusal, saying, I will think about it. When Amanda realized her persuasions were futile, she tried to hug Oscar goodbye. He noticed the sincerity in this outburst, but did not respond to it, still boiling with anger. After her departure, Oscar anticipated the moment of full truth revelation at the upcoming hearing. Oscar breathed a sigh of relief when the prosecutor announced in court, first of all charges against Mr. Anderson have been dropped. We believe he acted in self-defense. Finally, justice prevailed after so much suffering. Secondly, my office has issued arrest warrants for Mr. Stanley Cross, Mr. Max Angel, and Mrs. Oscar Anderson on various charges, including conspiracy, perjury, obstruction of justice, and hindering the course of justice, the prosecutor continued. Oscar nodded in satisfaction, knowing that all the criminals would receive their deserved punishment. He darkened upon hearing that Cross had tried to plant false evidence against him with the help of Max and Amanda. The feeling of betrayal pricked his heart once again. However, the sentences turned out to be relatively lenient compared to the scale of the crimes. Cross persisted in denying guilt, but Max and Amanda testified against him. Oscar felt mixed emotions upon learning the sentences. Cross received 11 years, Max 7, and Amanda, thanks to his own words, only 3 years. It was time for reconciliation and rebuilding life. Oscar allowed Amanda to stay with the children until her imprisonment. "This is your home," she said, meeting him with a light bag. Oscar appreciated his ex-wife's efforts to create a cozy home and smooth the upcoming move for the children. "She wanted me to settle in before the kids returned from school, so their routine wouldn't be disrupted," Oscar thought with understanding. Amanda left family photos so the children wouldn't forget her, and mentioned a new big bed, perhaps a symbol of hope for a second chance for both of them. Seeing Amanda's tears, Oscar felt conflicting emotions rising within himself. He suggested they move to the living room to talk openly. What followed touched Oscar to the core of his soul. "Oscar, I cannot express how sorry I am for what I have done and how I treated you," Amanda sincerely said, fully admitting her guilt. Her words were filled with pain and remorse. Oscar saw in her the woman he married many years ago. He silently embraced Amanda, giving her the chance to cry. When he heard the car signal, Oscar let her go. Alone, Oscar tidied up the house with a heavy heart. Lucy soon offered to help raise the children. Oscar agreed, realizing how difficult it would be to replace their mother alone. A month later, they visited Amanda in prison. Oscar's initial fears were dispelled. The prison environment turned out to be quite decent. Amanda remained positive, especially with the children. But in a conversation with Oscar, she once again expressed regret. She introduced him to her friend Candy, nicknamed Fool for past foolishness. When Amanda's parole eligibility date approached, Oscar and Lucy helped her settle in a small townhouse. On the day of her release, they greeted her with hugs and a celebratory dinner. Touched, Amanda thanked everyone for their support. Later, she invited Oscar to dinner, wanting to discuss their future relationship. Amanda prepared his favorite dish, but the conversation turned heavy. "Have you ever wanted to be with me again forever?" she asked hopefully. "If you mean remarrying, then no," sighed Oscar. "Too much has happened. But I have moved past it." Amanda was saddened but accepted the reality. Oscar speculated that over time, they both might find new life companions. "This is probably more than I deserve," Amanda said sadly. "But I can accept such a future." She thanked Oscar for not turning away from her and the children after what happened. "Amanda, you may not have noticed, but I have forgiven you," Oscar replied finally. "I hold no grudges against you, and I hope that eventually you can forgive yourself." "Maybe someday, but not soon," sighed Amanda. They embraced in farewell. Leaving Amanda's house, Oscar felt a strange sense of relief in his soul, as if he had let go of the last burden